So in this video, I want to answer the question, which one of these Spectral EQ dynamic resonance suppressor type plugins is the best? Because there are way too many out there on the market right now. So what I've done is run them all through 2 different tests, and I've come up with a scoring system. So we're gonna rate each one out of 20 points, and then at the end, we'll be able to compare them to each other and pick a winner. So this is my track we're gonna use as an example throughout the video. And the first test is going to be all about the user interface, but not just how each plugin looks, but when you open it up, how easy is it to use, how quickly can you dial in the settings you want, and how high quality does it feel. So as an example, let's say the piano in this track is muddy. And let's say we want to use some spectral EQ just to reduce these low-mid frequencies down here. So how easy is that move going to be on each of these plugins? So in this EQ, we just hit Option, Shift, double click, and it brings up a spectral EQ band, and then I can dial in the settings I want from there. So that's really easy to set up. I mean, it took me like 10 seconds to dial in the settings that I wanted. So I would give this user interface and the ease of use of the spectral EQ part of this plugin, I would give it a 9 out of 10. The only reason it's not a 10 out of 10 is because it's very much not the main part of the plugin. Like the plugin's built to be a normal EQ, so all the spectral EQ features are kind of hidden out of the way down here. And all those small buttons, they do make it a little harder to use. And that's just comparing it to all these other plugins that are made to be resonance suppressors right when you open them up. So there aren't really hidden controls in some of these other plugins that we'll see. So let's run the same test on each of the other plugins and give them a score, and then we'll move on to the second test and then give them a score again, and then we'll see who wins. So next up is the curves equator from Waves. How easy is it for me to dial in those same settings? I think this user interface is pretty easy to use. I mean, it was easy enough to dial back that muddiness in the piano. I don't think it's as intuitive as Fab Filters or some of the other ones we're gonna see. So I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10 for user interface. It's still a pretty high quality user interface in my opinion. And obviously all these ratings are completely subjective. It's just my own opinion, so you might disagree with me here, but I'm sticking with 7 out of 10 for the ease of use and user interface of this one. So next up we have this plugin called Dove. Let's see how easy it is to dial in those settings. So this plugin is purpose-built for resonance suppression, so it's pretty easy to dial in the settings I want, but I gotta say, I don't really like this user interface. Like it feels really laggy when I'm moving these bands around, and when the graphics come up, it also feels kind of laggy. And there's like 4 different bands showing here. There's the bottom band in the dark teal, and then there's the light teal, and then there's the light gray, and then there's the like even darker gray band in the background. Like, why do they need 4 different bands to show off what's going on? It kind of makes it confusing. So for user interface and just how high quality this thing feels compared to other plugins, I think I would give it like a 5 out of 10. So now we've got DS EQ3 from TB Pro Audio. So this plugin does give you a lot of options and control over the resonance suppression, but that's not what this first test is about. That's what the second test is going to be for. The first test is just about the user interface and how easy it is to dial things in and how quality it feels. And like, I feel like this user interface is kind of clunky. It doesn't feel very high quality. Like I can't drag my mouse and change the slopes of these bands like I can in FabFilter's EQ. I don't think the frequency analyzer in the background looks that good. Like it just doesn't look very high quality. Also, you can't really delete these bands. You have to go and hit reset and then bypass them and they stay there. I just think overall the user interface is a little outdated and clunky and it's not modern and sleek and just things could overall be more intuitive. So this thing is going to score higher in the next section where we talk about the level of control these plugins give you. But for user interface and ease of use, I would give this thing like a 5. So this plugin from Melda Production called Spectral Dynamics has a pretty simple user interface on the front of it. But if you click this edit button, it opens up this really in-depth spectral EQ. So this is another plugin that gives you a ton of control, but it's just a clunky user interface. Like I just wanted to change the output to 0 decibels and it brings up this calculator looking thing to type in 0 and it's clunky, and dialing in the threshold just in that one part of the frequency spectrum is a task on this thing. And then I know there's a draw feature on here, so you can put it in drawing mode. And then you can draw in the threshold and you can draw on this equalizer here. But it's a super clunky UI and it's not fun to use at all. They give you an insane amount of control in here, but I mean, I feel like it would take a year to properly learn all the ins and outs of this plugins and be able to use it really fast. So this is another one that's gonna score a lot higher on the level of control section, but for the user interface, I gotta give it like a 3 out of 10. I mean, it's just not easy to use at all. Like it's not user-friendly in any way. Now let's do this plugin called Rezo by a company called Mastering the Mix. So they do make it relatively easy to dial in the settings you want, but I gotta say, I hate this plugin. It's just like a worse version of so many other Spectral EQs, and the sound quality, it doesn't really sound good as it's reducing these frequencies. It just doesn't sound good to me. It just feels and looks and sounds like a cheaper version of some of these other resonance suppression plugins. So I mean, just because it's easy to dial in the settings, I'll give it a 4 out of 10, but I don't like anything else about this plugin, honestly. Like I'm just giving it a 4 out of 10 in the user interface section because it makes it relatively easy to dial in your settings. So we've got 3 plugins left with this test, and then we'll move on to the second test, which is gonna be more important. So here we've got Smooth Operator by Baby Audio. So again, with this plugin, they make it pretty easy to dial in like a specific area you want to reduce. So it's not too hard to dial in the settings, but it's another plugin where the user interface just feels and looks cheap to me. Like you can't even tell how many decibels you're reducing the frequencies by. There's no decibel meter anywhere. So you kind of just have to use your ears and guess, which I guess isn't a totally bad thing to not rely on your eyes all the time. But I just don't like this user interface that much. These bands are kind of clunky to move around, and you only get 5 points here. Like, I don't even think you can add in any extra points that I know of. Yeah, it's just 5 bands no matter what. With all the competition out there, I just don't think this plugin delivers with the user interface. I'm gonna give this one a 4 too. So next up we have Soothe 2, which is a heavy favorite going into the showdown. So let's see how quickly we can dial in this setting. I mean, this is the most intuitive Spectral EQ plugin. It's super easy to dial in whatever setting you want. The user interface is modern, it's easy to use, it's sleek, it's not confusing. Anyone could pick this up and learn how to use it pretty quickly. I'm giving this a 10 out of 10. So finally, the last plugin in test number 1 is called Spectral, and I think this is gonna be the underdog for this whole showdown. So this user interface just feels smooth, it's easy to control, I think it's intuitive. I would give this one a 9 out of 10. I really like this plugin a lot. It gives you a lot of control, which isn't what this test is about, but I do like the user interface. It's easy to use, it's easy to dial in the settings you want, and it feels high quality. So after test 1, these are my scores for the user interface. Now we're gonna move on to test number 2, and then we'll add the scores together and get our final results. So test number 2 is just to see how much control each of these plugins give us over the resonance suppression. So a great example of that in the real world would be vocal mixing. Like let's take this vocal. And what I wanna do is clean up some of this muddiness down here. And I also wanna de-ess the high end, but also boost the high end after I de-ess it if I can. So let's see how much control these plugins give us to do that. All the time, oh my mind is racing, lost in your eyes. All the time, oh my mind is racing, lost in your eyes. All the time, oh my mind is racing, lost in your eyes. All the time, oh my mind is racing, lost in your eyes. All the time, oh my mind is racing, lost in your eyes. All the time, oh my mind is racing, lost in your eyes. All the time, oh my mind is racing, lost in your eyes. All the time, oh my mind is racing, lost in your eyes. All the time, oh my mind is racing, lost in your eyes. All the time. So the great thing about this plugin that a lot of other Spectral EQs can't do is you can make totally separate bands wherever you want, and you can make a ton of different bands and dial in different areas and change the attack and release settings for different areas. And I think it's really nice that they added the attack and release here. And they do have the slider where you can control how smooth or narrow you want it. It doesn't give me as much control as I would like. I would like it to be able to go smoother than this. Like I would actually say that's still pretty narrow resonance suppression right there if you compare it to like Soothe. So it gives you a good amount of control, and I think the biggest thing is having the separate bands that you can control and being able to boost the frequencies after you suppress them. And it's nice I can set the range with this control here, so I know I'm getting like 3 decibels of suppression exactly, and I'm not getting any more than that. Now, a couple things I'd like to see added to this would be a knee setting and a ratio control. That would just give me even more control over this. But overall, I think this plugin has a good level of control. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10 for level of control. Now we've got this Waves plugin again, Curves Equator. All the time, oh my mind is racing, lost in your eyes. All the time, oh my mind is racing, lost in your eyes. All the time, oh my mind is racing, lost in your eyes. All the time, oh my mind is racing, lost in your eyes. All the time, oh my mind is racing, lost in your eyes. All the time, oh my mind is racing, lost in your eyes. All the time, oh my mind is racing, lost in your eyes. All the time, oh my mind is racing, lost in your eyes. All the time, oh my mind is racing, lost in your eyes. All the time, oh my mind is racing. So this one does give you a pretty high level of control. I wonder how many bands you can add. Like you can add a good amount of bands to shape this. Lost in your eyes. All the time, oh my mind is racing, lost in your eyes. Lost in your eyes. All the time, oh my mind is racing, lost. And it's nice it lets you control the attack and release. And you have this tilt function here where you can tilt the whole thing. And you have the precision knob here. Lost in your eyes.
eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing.
So I actually think I'm surprised by how good the level of control is in this plugin. I would give it an 8 out of 10. Now let's do the same thing for Dove.
Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing.
So this one gives you a lot of control, like the controls are there, but it doesn't seem to work the way I want it to. Like it's not that easy to shape the sound the way I want it to. Like I can't really force it to be exactly how I want in the low mids. I'm not really getting great de-essing right now.
Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost.
So the level of control they give you is pretty good, but the level of control I feel over this plugin is super low. Like it's hard to use. I don't feel like I'm in control when I use this plugin. I don't feel like I can shape my vocal to do whatever I want with it, like I feel like when I use some other plugins. So I'm gonna give this like a 5 out of 10 when it comes to level of control. And I know you can do side chaining with this plugin, and they have all these different reduction modes, and you can do mid-side suppression on here, and you can change the phase. So the level of control is high, but again, I'm just giving it that 5 out of 10 because I don't feel the control over this plugin. I just don't like using it that much. All right, now DS-EQ3. Let's try to reduce the mids again, reduce some highs, and if we can boost the highs, but not every plugin is gonna let us do that.
Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time.
This plugin does give you a ton of control. I mean, you've got the slope, the selectivity, you've got attack, release, threshold. You can set a max amount that it'll reduce the gain. So you have a range function. You can create a custom threshold down here. You can control the sensitivity for each band. I mean, you've got mid-side mode, left-right mode. You've got sidechain capabilities. So just because I don't love this user interface doesn't mean it doesn't have a lot of control. So I would give this like, I think a 9 out of 10 for level of control, because it really does give you a high degree of control over everything. It's just not super easy to use. All right, now for M Spectral Dynamics. This thing is a beast when it comes to control.
Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing.
I could never go into all the detail of what this plugin does. I mean, you could add multiple processing layers. I mean, there's the EQ threshold, the attack and release control that you can set throughout the frequency spectrum, which is crazy. I mean, you've got every control you could have possibly imagine. I gotta give this a 10 out of 10 for level of control. I mean, I would never use half of these controls. That's how in-depth it goes. So I'm giving this one a 10 out of 10 for level of control. That doesn't mean I like the user interface. I mean, I gave this a bad score on the user interface, but you gotta admit, it really gives you every control you could possibly imagine. Also, a lot of plugins don't give you control over the look ahead time, and I like to be able to control the look ahead time when I'm compressing things, so it's nice to have that too. All right, next up is Rezo by Mastering the Mix.
Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing.
I mean, besides picking where you want your sound to be reduced, this plugin barely gives you any control. Like, there's no attack and release. The only thing you can do is kind of set the threshold. You can't set the range. There's no look ahead time. I don't even think there's a sidechain function. There's not a sidechain function, so you can't use it for that. I mean, level of control for this plugin, I would give it like a 2 out of 10, I think. Sorry that you're just listening to this vocal loop over and over and over again, by the way, but it's just the only way to properly test all these plugins at once. So now let's move on to Baby Audio's Smooth Operator.
Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes.
I mean, this plugin really doesn't give you much control. It can do sidechaining up here, but like you really don't have that much control over the individual bands. I was trying to reduce the low mids in the vocal and also reduce the sibilance in the high end, and it was just kind of hard to dial that in with how these curves are. Like, I don't like using these at all. They're not easy to use, but there's no attack and release. There's no ratio. You can't control much more than these 5 bands that are on here, and 2 of them are fixed in the high and low positions, so you don't have that much to work with. I would really give this a 3 out of 10 for level of control. So now we only have 2 left. We've got Soothe now, and then we have Speccraft, and we're gonna see how those compare to each other.
Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes.
So Soothe does give you a good amount of control. You have the attack and release. You have the soft and hard modes. You can control the smoothness or the sharpness of it pretty easily, and it has a wide range from pretty smooth
Lost in your eyes all the time.
to really sharp.
Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost.
So that range is way bigger than like FabFilter's Spectral EQ, and you can sidechain. I use this to sidechain to other things all the time. It's got mid-side mode, but I do wish you can make individual bands, and in the individual bands change these settings like the depth and the sharpness and the selectivity. Because like if I'm de-essing the high end, I want different controls than what I'm doing in the low mids to control the low mids. So what I end up doing with Soothe a lot is I have like 2 or 3 different instances of Soothe in a row. Like one of them is working on the low mids of the vocal, one of them's working on the high mids, and one of them's doing the de-essing. So I need like 3 different instances of Soothe to dial in the settings that I want. So it doesn't give me as much control as I want, but still it's pretty good level of overall control. And I'm having trouble with the rating on this one. I know I gave FabFilter's EQ an 8, and I gave Curves an 8 for level of control, and they all give you a level of control in different ways. Like FabFilter, you can't control the sharpness as much, but you do have different bands. So there's trade-offs both ways. But I think for Soothe, I would give you an 8 for level of control. Now, finally, we've reached our last plugin on our last test. Let's see what Speccraft can do on this vocal mix.
Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing, lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing, lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing, lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing, lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing, lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing, lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing, lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing, lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing, lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing, lost in your eyes all the time.
This plugin gives me almost every control that I would want. Like there's the look ahead time down here. You have side chaining down here. You have the slope, ratio. You can turn the threshold into adaptive mode.
Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing.
So you can control if the threshold is reacting to the level of the incoming audio, and you can turn it on and off if you want and set the level for that. You have the knee, just like you would in a compressor, which is awesome. You have the Q, which is like the smoothness or the sharpness, attack, release. You can boost things up here.
Lost in your eyes all the time. Oh, my mind is racing. Lost in your eyes all the time.
So after I'm de-essing the vocal, I can use that boost to bring the whole high end of the vocal back up. So it's awesome to have that control too. I mean, I think I have to give this plugin a 10 out of 10 for level of control. Like you can make it do pretty much whatever you want. I do wish you could set a separate Q for the different bands that you have here. If you wanted a different Q, you would have to make 2 different instances of this plugin. So it's not perfect, but basically everything I could want in a Spectral EQ is here. So now we can see all the final results, and I think they're pretty interesting. Like FabFilter's EQ is in an interesting spot because it's not really made as a Spectral EQ. That's just a feature of the plugin, whereas all the rest of these plugins are dedicated Spectral EQ dynamic resonance suppressors, and FabFilter just uses that as an extra feature. So I think that's why it's not as high up. But for that price you're paying for FabFilter's EQ, you're getting the best EQ plugin in the market, and you're also getting a dynamic Spectral EQ with that. And then there's Soothe. I mean, in the real world, when I'm mixing a track and I just want to remove the muddiness from something really quickly, I can pull up Soothe, dial in the right settings in like 2 seconds, because it just has the best user interface. I think it looks the best. It's the easiest to use. It's just the king of the user interface. It doesn't give you as much control as some of the other plugins, but sometimes you don't need all that control. You just need to dial something in quickly. Then I really do think the rightful winner of all these tests is this plugin, Spectral. As you can see, I'm using it in demo version, but after doing all this, I'm definitely gonna buy this plugin. Like the level of control it gives you is something I've wanted out of Soothe for a long time, and I just haven't had that level of control with Soothe. So when I need to go into extra detail on a vocal mix and really dial something in, I'll open up this plugin and I'll definitely be using it on mixes. So thank you guys for watching. You can check out my sound packs at bigzsounds.com. I'll catch you next time. Peace.